Good evening. This is Stan Deyo, your host for the show on the 10th of April, 2025. There are a number of things that I want to talk about today. They are important things, obviously. Um, the I guess a couple things. First of all, I want to look at how we prepare for what is coming, either by civil war, or by environmental changes, by nuclear war on the planet, by financial collapse, these kind of things. My wife Holly wrote several editions of a book called Dare to Prepare, and it's to prepare for a lot of things. And she has 69 chapters in the book, and we're going to cover some of those, including the first one we're going to look at is like martial law. And then the rest of the time we have some left, I want to talk about the rise of the control of the reborn Atlantis under Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. That boy has so much stuff under his control. His investments, he has like nearly $1 trillion. I think it's 900 something billion in the public investment fund over in Saudi Arabia, and he's invested in things all over the planet: the United States, Europe, Africa, and he's just like an octopus gathering in things. So we're going to talk about that a bit later. But first, let's talk about uh, the coming crises. If you're watching what's happening in the United States, we're seeing increasing threats of physical violence. These protest groups, tens of thousands of people across the country over the weekend, out in the streets with placards against the Trump administration, particularly President Trump and Elon Musk, his advisor. Um, and that's an interesting point. Elon Musk is, supposed to be, the great poobah of electric cars, but Mohammed bin Salman also has an investment in two electric car firms that are different, and perhaps some arguments say better than the Musk electric vehicle. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. I'm running ahead of myself here. Okay, so you remember the storming of the Bastille for the French Revolution. The farmers came with their pitchforks and rakes and things and axes, knocked down the gates to the palace, and they wiped out the gentry of France to take over, make a rule of the people, the proletariat, I guess. Well, right now, what we have is all this grassroots complaining uh, in the kind of pre-Hitler era in the Weimar Republic in Germany, they had problems like that, coming up the rising of the proletariat to take over. And in Russia, for the Russian Revolution, they overthrew the Tsar and marched through the streets, and killed them all. And it was the people coming up, to take over. So these things are not uh, infrequent in human events, but it's a change of the rule of a particular country or regime. So we're seeing this develop here, and I think that very shortly, things are going to erupt to violence. I mean, like where people start getting shot, knifed, killed, bombed, whatever, by the left extremists, the pro-communist infiltrators in this country, and they're using a lot of people they've duped with all kinds of strange propaganda and whatever, and a lot of people in the left, extreme left movement don't really know what they're doing. They think it's cool because they've been educated that way. They've been turned, in essence, or recruited into the communist attempt to overthrow the government. Now, I'm against that. I don't want the communists to overthrow this government. I've been fighting it for 60 years of my life. Uh, anyway, look out for shots being fired, people being killed, perhaps even some biowarfare leaks out into the game. That's possible too. Think of whatever the terrorists can get a hold of in this country to really cause us a lot of grief. Hit our power structure, the grids, hit our nuclear facilities, some of them. Uh, I don't need to enumerate them all. I hate to give them any more ideas, but they would look at weak spots in our whole uh, civil order here and how they could bring us to our knees and overthrow the government of the United States. So beware of this coming. Um, if it does happen, like I'm thinking, who is going to be the face of the revolution against President Trump and his administration? I mean, it's not going to be Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer. It's going to have to be somebody with a bit of strong presence. Now, Obama might be the one they put up as the head of that revolution. I don't know. He's certainly been behind the scenes for some time now. But somebody is going to be the face of the revolution against, the MAGA movement here. So watch for it. Try to see who's gaining strength in the public as far as the resistance against President Trump. I don't think that Hillary Clinton is going to be viable, and certainly Kamala, whatever Harris is a no-go, is a no-show. She can't do anything strong, and Waltz himself, he can't do anything. He's too weak and sissy-like. So it's going to be somebody with a stronger presence, and I think Obama's about the only one I can see at the moment that has public favor on the left. Anyway, if this revolution does manifest with shooting and pillaging and burning cities and whatever like they're threatening to do, then it's going to force the government of the United States to declare martial law. There just won't be any way around it. And this is expected by the communists. They think we'll declare martial law, and that'll just make the situation worse because we're so divided in the country. Everybody's afraid, ratting on each other about who's a liberal and who's not. These things are going to really escalate the demise of the United States from internal revolution, civil war, revolution. Really, they're trying to do it. Now, what I'm going to do is address some of these issues that we're potentially going to be facing very shortly. Um, we've had it so good for a long time that people have forgotten to prepare like our grandparents did, that were out in the plains and the farms and the ranches and whatever, how they had spare food and spare, you know, candles and soap and medicines and things like that. And, weapons to defend against marauders and wildlife. Now, Holly wrote this book. The last edition was in 2018, I think. Edition 6, anyway. It's called Dare to Prepare. And there are 69 chapters in this book. And it's 632 pages long. And it's about like a telephone book in dimensions. It's a lot of much needed information about how to prepare for various things. Now, if martial law is declared, she addressed this on page 44 of the book. As we've already seen during tornado disasters in Arkansas, January 1999, martial law and curfews were imposed. A similar situation took place after Hurricane Katrina. While technically not martial law, it was the closest thing to it. President Bush dispatched 7,200 active duty ground troops to Louisiana and Mississippi, in addition to 10,000 National Guard troops sent by the Pentagon. This brought the total Guard contingent to about 40,000 troops, with curfews strictly enforced and businesses closed. Okay, when, if we have martial law in your neighborhood and all over the country, how long will your gasoline or your diesel last? I mean, there's no transport unless it's approved by the martial law troops. This is an excellent reason to have a dependable bicycle, spare tires, and repair parts for things to get around, manually. In fact, I'll just show you a picture of where I'm coming from with this. There's a photo from Bourbon Street in New Orleans during the martial law there. Let me just get that up here, share screen and window and here, and we're up now. Okay, now we're seeing this picture here on my notes. If you can zoom in on that, you'll see that here are troops with, probably AR-15s, variations of that, marching down the streets. And you didn't want to mess with them because under military law, you do what they say without question. They do hold the guns. Now, another thing that you're going to want to look at is water filtration systems. Now, Holly looked at a number of these things, did an extensive investigation. We tried several of them. Our favorite here is the Berkey water system for in the home. the British Big Berkey filter. We have that in our kitchen. In fact, two of them. And then there's stuff for when you're outside, on the go or picnic or just looking for water out in the fields or whatever. You can use the Katydin Expedition Group here. That's a way to pump the water through a filter. You have to do that because it's a very fine pore filter. Here's a gravity fed version, which is like the Berkey, but it's their version of Katydin. And so you can see about that on page 58 in her book, the Dare to Prepare book. Very important to water. You can't exist more than 2 or 3 days without water. With food, you can go longer, but without food, you can go longer. But without water, 2 or 3 days is going to make you delirious if you don't have it. Okay, now the next thing here is item 4 on my list is first aid supplies on page 189. Now, certainly, you're going to need things to protect bleeding wounds. Uh, you know, um, they've found that bullet wounds and stuff, an emergency treatment to stop the bleeding is a Kotex tab, like a probe that you punch into it, and that soaks up the blood and swells up and blocks the bleeding. I know that sounds gross, but it's not really. It's a really quick way to stop the bleeding. I'm sure they make things that are like powders and things you can use as well, but that's a very stable one and lets you move around a bit and not bleed to death. Um, you know, Antibiotics if you can get them, painkillers. Certainly, you're going to need that if you've broken an arm or whatever. You'll need, gauze, and slings for broken limbs and band-aids of all kinds for the fingers. Um, and so read about the details of it, page 189. In fact, let me just see if I can pull page. Let's see, where are we here? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do here is stop the screen sharing, go to a different one here, which is the index of the book here. Let's have a look. Okay, here we are. Now, page, what did I say here? We're at page 189. Okay, the 189. Okay, this is her chapter on that. I mean, you can see it's got photo illustrations and names of various brands of things. Uh, Very important. You have it for your car. You need antibiotics. Look at these things here. Protect your airways and alcohol wipes. She's really done a super job in listing all the things you need in your first aid kit, which you can buy at Walmart and various places like that. Um, and let's see what we've got here. Yeah, there's just so many things here. Gunshot wound dressing. Yeah, all right. Look at all that stuff. Blood clot, quick clot travel, quick clot trauma pack. That's probably was something like that uh, tampon type thing I was telling you about, where you can stick it in like a tube. You can stick the end of it in and let the thing swell and stop the bleeding. That's tampons there. Yeah, there's so many things that you wouldn't normally think of. She's taken time to research every bit of this. It took her 2 years of intense research when she's ready to write a book, but she's been learning this stuff since she was about 15 years old. So it's worth looking at. You'll look here, you will see a medication like for, we said antibiotics, but something to stop diarrhea, aspirin, decongestants, especially if you have some kind of a flu or, germ warfare floating around, whatever. This is all first aid medication. So when I tell you that 632 pages of absolutely necessary, detailed information, I do mean it. It's just amazing. I mean, we sat around and she'd say, "What about this? And what about that? Can you think of anything?" And I'd add something now and then. But she has really uh, hugely developed all these details. Uh, okay, now we'll just stop that for the moment here. I'm back on the screen. Um, okay, another thing. Actually, I suppose I should get back on there and show you. Um, there are a number of highlights I've taken out of the 69 chapters. Now imagine if you're if it's a earthquake, a hurricane, something that destroys power and things like that. Obviously, the things that you need to cook food with and stay warm with, and to get around are important. On my let's just have a look at that one here, and it's just going to be about what you need in that situation. Uh, okay, this is from my notes here today. All right. First aid supplies was page 189 we looked at. Now, on page 298, we have all kinds of information on generators. And following that, on page 314, we have fuel storage of diesel and gas and gasoline. Um, and then we have cooking without power starting on page 320. And part of that is solar cooking on page 343. And let me just bring that up here. You can use a cardboard box or make a cardboard box or a wooden box, whatever, to these dimensions here, 14 inches by 12 inches, length, width, and height of it about 5.5 inches or so. And you can use aluminum foil, the shiny side of it, don't wrinkle it up, to make these four sides of a trapezoid focused down in through a glass oven door or glass door of some sort that you put there. And down inside is where you can cook stuff. You can heat tea, make solar heated tea. And it doesn't, I mean, you can cook cakes and things like that as well, but it takes a bit of time. And this glass oven door, if you can find a, secondhand one of those, that keeps the heat in and allows you to build up the heat inside this to, you know, cook your goods. And different kinds of insulation can be used, as she shows here. Um, so anyway, very important thing, you can cook using sunlight. That's, of course, if you don't have clouds and stuff like that. But we've tried it. In fact, we've got one we bought that was on sale that you didn't have to build it. It was already done out of cardboard type stuff. And you'll want to look at things like communications gear. That's going to be important. Let's see, communications, firearms, biowarfare. All right, I'm going to stop that screen share and go over to the book again. Where are we here to book? Uh, Dare to prepare, share. Okay, and in that we want to get over to page 351 where communications are covered. Look, this stuff, if you were having to think of it yourself, you go crazy and you might not even be able to find it because other people are suddenly realizing they need these things that I've been talking about. Okay, chapter 33, communications, about conventional phones and VoIP Skype, smartphones, smartphone pluses, and some of the drawbacks of cell phones and those kind of things, or satellite phones and two-way radios. Okay, um, you know, two-way radios only work probably 15 miles or so around where you are, so they're for local communication. And satellite phones may be problematic because in either a solar EMP or a nuclear EMP or a targeted destruction of our satellites, communication satellites, we're not going to be able to communicate through satellite stuff. I guess there's always smoke signals, I jest, but anyway, it is nice to have, some Motorola devices or whatever, or shortwave radio if you can use that. I mean, where we are, we're limited. We have to go from here up to Denver up in the and sorry up to Colorado Springs in the mountains to a repeater because we're down in a low area, and so our handheld, shortwave radio stuff only goes to the local area unless we can get to that repeater and go out to the world. So you have to look at your own situation if you're going to go shortwave. Um, okay, now here's a list of the ones that we looked at here, prices of them. Okay, and you can see Baofeng. That's probably Chinese. I don't know that I'd go for that. But anyway, try to go for American made or European made of some sort so that you're not dependent on our enemies for communications chips to work for you. you do have to think about these things. Over at the company that Tim Cardy and I founded, EMP Shield in Kansas, um, we we looked at a number of things that we put into our circuits, and one of them was a what was it? A krypton gas-filled tube, a small little tube thing, about the size of your pinky finger, your little finger on the end of it. And we could only get those in China, and we needed that to react quickly enough to sense an EMP pulse fast enough that we can short out all of the equipment that's on our EMP shield or connected to it down to ground to safety. We can keep it away from the EMP pulse and shut that pulse down to ground and protect our gear. But we realized in a board meeting that look, we can't depend on the Chinese, supplying us things that we need against their weapons. So we looked at several things, and we've now gone to a solid state thing made in the United States and its territories as well. So you have to think about these things. You do have to think about what device you got, where it was made, and yeah, there's just so much information in here. I'm just showing here. This is all in just that little chapter. Really good stuff. Now I'm going to go to page 406 in the book about firearms. Now she consulted with regular law enforcement people about the best types of ammunition, the best types of guns to have for whatever use you're going to have for it. And he, okay. Here's a little bit of a brag about me. She says, like many issues, the choice to have guns among your preparedness gear is up to the individual. Both Stan and I grew up in families that had and used firearms. Holly's dad was a marksman in the Army, and Stan was captain of his high school small bore rifle team. He beat the NRA national champion in a match at the Air Force Academy. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And she then goes through the various things here on personal security. Okay. Yeah. You can see that all this stuff is just really good information. Uh, the officer she was getting information from on the gun says, for a personal protection handgun, the most deadly is a 357 Magnum revolver with a 125 grain hollow point bullet. It far surpasses Clint Eastwood's movie 44 Magnum for one-shot kills. However, the 44 Magnum with a 6-inch barrel or longer is the best hunting handgun available without going to some of the more exotic calibers. I tell you what, a 44 caliber, you know, Magnum, if you didn't knock you over when you shot it, it would probably obliterate whoever you were shooting it with. I mean, it's just not going to leave much behind. It makes a big hole, and it has a real punch to knock them over. Anyway, Smith and Wesson 357. You can clean it easily. And Ruger 357 is durable. Uh, okay. Okay, Eric, one of the other advisors says, I concur with the thought about uh, the Ruger, but he says, remember that the 357 recoil is tough to get used to. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about, Taurus or Ruger, but anyway, as you can see, there's a lot of information on the guns and that most people don't even realize or know probably. Here's some organizations and phone numbers you can contact if you need to ask questions about whether you can carry it in your car or whatever in your state. Good stuff. Now, let's go. One of the things that I'm sure is going to happen according to biblical prophecy is that viruses or pestilences will kill 80% of the population. There will be a huge super COVID type thing, or maybe several forms of it, which will target certain DNA patterns, certain races of people, and they will catch the disease and die. But this chapter 42 here is biowarfare decontamination, page 424. How you can make your own sodium hypochlorite solution to decontaminate with if you've been exposed. procedures in wearing full protective clothing, hat, gloves. You can see here a picture of them in a clean suit. Uh, there's just so much information that you will need to know should you be exposed to this, and you won't have time to look it up anywhere except right here. You turn to that page and start reading what to do. Okay, purifying water from all that is a different way you do that. Here are the various things that we know about, uh, to kill microorganisms that are toxic. You can use UV light at this frequency, and anyway, that's good on that. Now, a clear and present danger is going to be the use of nuclear weapons against the United States. You can count on it. China, Russia, and probably Iran, if not Saudi Arabia, I'm not sure, but Iran at least, will attack the United States in a nuclear attack. And the Hopi prophecy keeper that invited Holly and I down to speak with him in '96 told us that there was going to be, first of all, a multi-sided, multifaceted civil war in the United States that would absolutely put neighbor against neighbor and would destroy us with the conflict. While we're weak in this in-house fighting, China, Russia, and a Middle Eastern nation will invade the United States, will destroy major cities with nuclear bombs and perhaps chemical and biological warfare. And when they thoroughly just destroyed, most of the American infrastructure, for some reason, the prosecutor said they will then turn around. The Chinese will leave, the Russians will leave, and the Iranians will leave. They're probably offshore anyway. And so they will have done their damage to us, and there will be a remnant, small groups of people, and the North American Indian people, the various tribes will all gather in the Four Corners region of the Rocky Mountains and a little bit north of that to form a revived American nation. It'll be a new kind of country, but the prophecy keeper told us that the young men of the tribes, of the Indian tribes, and of the European survivors, the European American survivors that come to that area, there will be friction between the cultures, but eventually it will normalize into a new set of laws in their new country. Anyway, this chapter here shows here in this is Cuba, showing missile emplacements there at the time, um, and that was during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Where they are now, I don't know, but I know China's got missile complexes in Cuba as well. Okay, what are we looking at? Oh, this is cool here. Uh, you need to protect yourself. And if you're able to stay in your home after a nuclear blast, maybe 15, 20 miles away, your biggest problem is going to be the fallout. And that only occurs where the prevailing wind blows what's called an anvil shaped cloud up and sideways. And that anvil shaped cloud, it tells you that you can walk away from that at the walking pace. You can walk and get out from under that fallout cloud. You don't have to just sit there and take it. Now, it also depends upon other winds and storms that occur at the same time that may whip up this fallout cloud and throw it all around you. That's the problem. So if you're in a home where you can build a temporary fallout shelter, then you can weather it. You might be in there 2 or 3 weeks. But Holly and I were able to get a hold of brochures published by FEMA at ready.gov, and we found one of the old ones back in the 50s, during the Cuban Missile Crisis and things. And so we were able to reproduce that in the book to show you how to build. Um, let's see here, how to build something in your house. Oh, gee, that's a sight you'd hate to see, is a nuclear bomb over New York. Okay, and we give the pressure waves that you might see from the kill zone that where the bomb is dropped. If you're right here in the center of this little circle, um, and this is your scale, 0 to 15 miles, then after you get out here to this 15-mile range, the blast is only at 1 atmosphere, which is over normal atmosphere that'd be about 2 when it hits you. So you want to be at least 15 miles away and 20 miles preferably from a heavy, uh, like 1 megaton bomb. If that, in our case, that'd be we're okay because we're that far from Colorado Springs anyway, and you don't want to look at the blast, the flash of light. Uh, Try your best not to turn that way when you start to see a flash because it burns out your retina and you'll be blind, which does make life problematic. Um, okay, here's an interesting fact. Initial radiation. Radiation is produced in the first minute following detonation. This initial pulse is so intense from even a 1 kiloton device that its radiation would like to kill 50% of everybody within half-mile radius of the bomb's explosion. Yeah, you've seen enough movies to know that the ground just waves like it was made of water when this thing hits, detonates and puts the pressure wave out. You'll see. Actually, I've seen it in some of the Army films I watched, where the nuclear bomb went off, and you saw a ripple, a splash ripple, round ripple, come away from the bomb, out moving the dirt as though it were your water. You could see waves in the dirt in the land as it passed, and so you can expect that to shake up things if you're close enough to be within the blast radius. Uh, okay, this is if Denver were hit with a 25 megaton blast. Um, let's see here. Okay, 30 miles away, we're still in the safe zone for where we are. But let's see here. It says 1 megaton map over Denver. That's a megaton, and this is a 25 megaton, which the Russians have. They've had Tsar Bomba, which they've tested, and that's a mighty blast. Now, why they would hit Denver rather than Colorado Springs, where the military facilities are and the continuance of government underground and where Cheyenne Mountain is, I don't know. But anyway, this is what we use as what she used as a illustration of that. So many things here. Oh yeah. Yeah, and it explains various measurements, Rankins, etc. And if you've been exposed to a certain amount of radiation, you get loss of appetite and some nausea, and takes you about a week to get over that. So you do get over it. 100 to 200 Rankins, then you get hair losses, bleeding out the eyes, ears, and things, nose. Anyway, I don't mean to dwell on this because it's bad news, but that is important. And the fact that you can build a shelter inside your home is really cool out of dirt and sandbags and all kinds of stuff. Now, here we're looking at the sheltering, different ways to do it. House with a basement with a shelter. Okay. How many inches of lead will stop an 80 rad exposure or whatever? And you can see here that using plywood, it takes 5 feet thick plywood to shield properly. The best shield is lead, then steel, then concrete, and earth or solid brick, 17 inches of that. So you can even go out in your yard and pack up dirt, and 17 inches thick will shield you from 500 rads per hour. There. Okay. And if you want to go 1,000 rads per hour, which is really intense, then that earth thing would have to be nearly 2 feet thick. Okay, this is really, good information to have to know how much you have to pack outside your windows or your shelter area on the top floor, things like that. Here's what FEMA things we're showing here: a fallout shelter in the basement. Um, I don't know what they had up here in the roof of that, but anyway, these are things that you need to consider when you're building a stay-in-place shelter: sanitation, light, radio, bedding, clothes, first aid, radiation monitor. And this is from the FEMA thing showing you could use, uh, like cabinets, closed cabinets and things, and pack them with dirt. And you live in here and only come out periodically, to do your business, or, get some water or something that you've stored there, just short-term exposures. Anyway, I know this is, really grim stuff to think about, but if I don't help you with this, don't tell you to read her book, I'm remiss in my duties, because you need to have this on hand to help you. And even if you don't have to use it, it's going to give you um, a bit of sanity and then a bit of hope. Here are some more FEMA plans for how to build your shelter. Uh, and you can even use, let's see if I've got it down here. Yeah, you can use this one here. Yeah, and then you can have some cargo, what do you call them? The sea containers, and you can put those together. Let me see if I've got it down here somewhere. Planter walls, right? Okay. This is really detailed stuff if you have time to build your own. Yeah. Roof slab. I thought somewhere here, I can't remember what page it's on, but we show here shipping containers. Here we go. We show those arranged here somewhere. There we go. How you can arrange a shipping container, and if you've got a place that you can bury it in dirt, and then you can live in it fairly comfortably for a period of time until the radiation is passed. Good stuff, hey? All right. Okay. I think that is probably, oh, yeah. I want to show you a thing here. Let's stop this screen share. Good. Now I'm back, and you can see me while I mumble. Sorry about that, guys. Old age setting in. Okay, and let me get over here to Photoshop, and I'm going to bring that up for you. Share screen. Now, this is the front and back of Holly's book. Now, I designed the cover to show the important things, to tell you the time is running out. And when we wrote the book, or when I did this for the front cover, when Holly published it, um, people might have thought, oh, this is extreme. We'll never have to use these things. And so I likened it to a poker game here, where you have chips of shelter and skills, water, for energy, radios, filters, things we've talked about here, and then even how to care for pets. And the hourglass, of course, the obvious thing is it's almost out of time. And here are the cards being dealt against earthquakes and pandemics and nuclear stuff and solar EMPs. Oh, listen, on solar EMPs, that is so important, because the sun is becoming very unstable this solar cycle. And, over the last, gosh, mm, 3 years, we've been seeing increasing amounts of sunspots and C-class and a few X-class flares, which are bad, because if they're aimed at the Earth when they erupt like that, they can wipe out all power grids and communications and equipment, electronic equipment on the side of the Earth that's facing that flare, or that coronal mass ejection. And that's why Tim and I developed the EMP shield, was to save your communications gear, and like the electronics you might have in your backup power system, things like that, so that you can regroup and have power for your neighborhood there, or your friends. Anyway, this is to get the message across here, and I took this picture here, these nice mountains and the rainbow, to remember that God promised after the great flood that he would never kill the earth or the people by rain again. Just a thing to know, let you know that we think that God is in control and watching over us. And there's a bit about Holly there. As you can see, she earned her BA in English with understudies in sociology and geology from the University of Missouri in Kansas City. She's really a backroom researcher. She doesn't have to get out in the front of people like I do. So she puts her hand up my back and moves my lips so I can tell her message to you guys. And because I'm a good front face, but she's the one that does all the hard work behind the scenes there. So thank you, Holly, for your work on this for all of us. Do appreciate it. Okay, now we're good there. And I'll just put that photo away. Okay. Now, a bit about our friend in quotes, um, uh, Mohammed bin Salman. He's the prince of Saudi Arabia, and I suspect he's going to be the prince that Daniel, the prophet, spoke of, who signs the peace agreement with Israel and the surrounding Arab nations, the many nations. Now, this is important because a prince, Mohammed bin Salman is a prince right now. And until his father dies, and he's been ill with lung infections and various other infections for the past 3 or 4 years. And when his father dies, well, of course, Mohammed bin Salman is no longer a prince. Now, there are two, there's a real prince like him, and there is one who's treated like a prince, and that's Jared Kushner, President Trump's son-in-law. In fact, the one of the popular news magazines here in the United States did a story on Mohammed bin Salman and Jared Kushner because they're the thickest thieves are in business together, and called them the princelings. They're both like a prince. So it is important to know that Mohammed bin Salman has about $900 million. Uh, I think it's million, not billion. Yeah, $900 million. No, oh, let me just see here. I think his personal wealth is 900 million, but he controls the public investment fund of Saudi Arabia, which is 930 billion dollars, just shy of $1 trillion investment fund. Now, what he's been doing, of course, is going across. He and Jared Kushner have been going across the Middle Eastern nations or the Arab nations and saying, look, we'll make a business plan for your country about how you can achieve the goals you want by working together, and we'll develop the business plan for you. And one of the main things that all of them are wanting is a peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Now, uh, to do that, the Palestinians want a two-state solution. If that happens, which Mohammed bin Salman and Kushner as well may agree to happen, it'll mean that there have to be committees or people put in place in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank to monitor the government and the political structure of these areas so that no terrorists can get in and run the government of the Gazans or the Palestinian state, wherever they are. And if they'll do that, if they'll agree to that, Kushner and Mohammed bin Salman and some Arab nations will get together and dump a lot of money into developing the Gaza Strip as a resort town or coastal resort thing. It's no joke, and that's what they've decided to do. And I heard Jared Kushner talking about it in an interview. So, uh, what we're going to look for is a couple of things: is the either the Israelis bomb Damascus, where the Iranian missiles are stored, or a natural event. There is, an eruption, because there have been a lot of eruptions in the area of Syria where Damascus is, destroys Damascus, and that magma eruption could be an act of God. But if it's destroyed by a nuke, everybody will blame Israel, and so there will be an immediate call for this peace treaty and the uh, uh, the, the Abraham Accords that Mohammed bin Salman and Jared Kushner have put together will be the vehicle to bring Middle Eastern peace for a 7-year period. They've already talked about the length of it to see that it works long enough to let the people of Earth agree to this structure, this new world government. Now, You've heard me talk about Saudi Arabia is underneath the sands of Saudi Arabia, of the Arabian Peninsula, was ancient Atlantis. It was a real place. It is buried under a lot of sandy mud and stuff. It's drying out and blowing away in various places. And this occurred um, several thousand years ago, and it occurred before the Great Flood that you had Atlantis. But the Great Flood was caused by a large meteor impact in the Indian Ocean, which threw 2 miles of seabed and stuff backsplash onto Oman and the southern southeastern part of the Arabian Peninsula. Now, I'm preparing a new PDF about the things I have found in recent times since I published the Vindicator Scrolls, which analyzed the Plato's documents about the description of Atlantis and where it was and how it looked and where various things were. And I proved in that, the original one, to my satisfaction, that it was Atlantis, but I've upgraded the proof by more discoveries, which I'm going to be sharing in this new PDF. There is no doubt that the Saudi Peninsula, the Arab Peninsula, was surrounded by water before the Great Flood, and it was the mythical Atlantis. And I found where the temple or the palace, if you wish, of Poseidon's home was, and it's buried, believe this or not, on the island of Dammam, which is now connected to, the sand that was deposited connected this island to the mainland of Saudi Arabia. And on the island of Dammam, Dammam, there is a central place, a high little hill, which you can see from orbit. And in fact, I talked to the astronaut that took the picture. It's like a little perfect circle with a pimple in the middle of it from orbit. And that is where, underneath that is where Poseidon's temple or palace is. It's covered in maybe 15 to 16 feet of sand, which can be, using water hoses and pressure, you can suck it all out, and we can reopen the palace that Poseidon had there and see it. Strange enough, this is where Aramco has its oil storage tanks up over the top of that hill. And, I suspect that a lot of the oil that the Arabs have for the Aramco group are shallow oil deposits, which were made from the dead animals and people that were killed during that great flood and deposited in that area where it all ran down and collected. And you can have an oil field develop in 15 feet deep, shallow uh, regions under certain conditions of pressure, temperature, that kind of stuff. Um, so I do think that a lot of the oil and petroleum gas and whatever we've been getting out of Saudi Arabia is the byproducts of a bunch of decaying, Atlanteans and their animals and things like that. I know that's gross sounding, but I do think that's happening. It's rather poetic justice that now we have a young Mohammed bin Salman becoming like a new Poseidon. He's the elephant in the room in the Middle East. He's the boy to watch, the leader to watch. He's consolidating power in so many things. Um, Let me see if I've got some of the holdings he's got here. Just let me grab this here. Um, yeah, do I have that? Okay, yeah. Have I got time here? I've got time. Okay. We're going to just share this data I've got on some of his holdings here. Now he controls the public investment fund, the PIF fund in Saudi Arabia. I was telling you about that. You know, it's the wealth fund. It has 930 billion in assets at the moment. He has a control of that of about 10% or so. Now, this page I'm looking at here I was looking at Mohammed bin Salman, what his holdings were, or the public investment fund anyway that he controls. Okay, it's controlled by Mohammed bin Salman, even though this guy might be the governor of it here, this uh, Yasser Al Rumayyan. But Mohammed bin Salman controls this huge fund. That's where he's getting money for like the city of Neo and stuff like that. Um, let's see. Let's see. Council of Masters here. Economic. Let's see. Okay. The public investment fund is aligned with the government's Vision 2030, with the aim to diversify the economy to bolster resources of the PIF and help financing investments into foreign companies such as Uber and Tesla. In PIF receive cash from central bank, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now here are some of their investment projects. I mean, I'm telling you, this is Saudi Arabia, the Arabian Peninsula, is the new Atlantis of our time. It's probably going to be the home of the antichrist or the false prophet, one of the two of them, because this is where the wealth of the world is going to be centered in the coming days, the coming months, the tribulation period, whenever it's happening. Now, I've read several reports that the stated oil reserves of Aramco, Saudi Arabia, were overstated by at least 50%. And they've been limiting, the Saudis have, the production of oil, and at the same time divesting their holdings. Instead of in oil, they're going into various countries like car manufacturing and banks, blockchain deals. I mean, they're placing themselves into power structures all over the planet so that they don't have to depend on oil and that they have tremendous control over the world economy. Let's see here. Okay, what are we looking at here? Uh, yeah, yeah. You'll have to go to this. This is in Wikipedia, Public Investment Fund, and see all this stuff. And when it says, the PIF fund is doing this, of course, understand that Mohammed bin Salman treats it like his own personal bank. He's in control of it. Uh, yeah, here we mentioned Jared Kushner, and anyhow, it's you just got to watch Mohammed bin Salman and Jared Kushner in the Middle East. They're going to settle this uh, Gazan situation, the Palestinians, as they call it. Yeah, I guess we're going to see this settle within the next 6 months. A number of things have to happen over this tariff situation that President Trump has put into play. But as soon as that settles down and the stock market, quietens and stabilizes, I think you'll see the effort to develop the Gaza Strip and West Bank as well as part of this new deal to have a two-state solution where the quote-unquote Palestinians and the Israelis share Israel, and chunks will be carved out of Israel and the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, and somehow or another they're going to link the two of them so that they can communicate between both locations of the Palestinian state. It's going to happen. I'm not happy about it, but it's prophetic, and you can see it forming right before your very eyes. Just keep your eyes on Mohammed bin Salman, Saudi Arabia, and the coming global economic meltdown that's going to occur. Mohammed bin Salman is going to play a big part in the new digital world economy. So, all right, folks. Look, I wandered over several topics tonight that were on my plate this week. Um, there's just so much happening over there. You got to watch the Middle East. Um, there's it's just a huge conglomeration of enemies of the United States. They think that we are the big Satan and Israel's the little Satan, and I guarantee you, they are looking to destroy America and Israel. Probably America first, because they don't want Israel to have a big brother to protect them. Anyway, think about that, and I'll see you next week. Okay. Good night, folks.